Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a vast, calm lake. The surface is like a mirror reflecting the sky and the trees around it. Now picture someone throwing a stone into that lake. What happens? Ripples, right? Those ripples spread out, disturbing the calm surface, reaching far beyond the point where the stone entered the water. Now, my friends, that lake is your mind. And those stones, they are the countless events, words, and actions that life throws at us every single day. But here's the million-dollar question. Do you have to be the lake? Do you have to let every stone create ripples that disturb your peace? That's what we are here to talk about today. The power of not reacting, the incredible strength that comes from choosing your response, instead of being at the mercy of every stimulus that comes your way. You see, most of us go through life reacting. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and we honk our horn, maybe even shout a few choice words. Our boss criticizes our work, and we immediately feel defensive, perhaps even angry. A loved one says something that hits a nerve, and we snap back without thinking. We are like that lake, our surface constantly disturbed by the stones life throws our way. But what if I told you there was another way? What if I said you could be more like the sky above that lake? Vast, open, unchanging, no matter what happens below. Now, I'm not saying you should become emotionless or detached, far from it. What I'm proposing is something far more powerful. It's about creating a space between stimulus and response. It's about reclaiming your power to choose how you react to the world around you. Let's break this down a bit. When something happens, good or bad, there's a split second before we react. Most of us aren't even aware of this moment. We've trained ourselves to react so quickly that it seems instantaneous. But that split second is where our power lies. It's in that moment that we have the opportunity to choose our response. Think about it. How many times have you said something in the heat of the moment that you later regretted? How often have you acted out of anger or fear, only to wish later that you'd handled things differently? That's what happens when we give away our power to choose. We let our automatic reactions rule us, rather than consciously deciding how we want to respond. We can train ourselves to expand that split second. We can learn to create a pause between what happens to us and how we respond. And in that pause lies our freedom. Now, I can almost hear some of you thinking, that sounds great in theory, but how do I actually do that in real life? Well, my friends, I'm glad you asked, because that's exactly what we are going to explore together. The first step is awareness. We need to become aware of our reactions. This means paying attention to how we respond to different situations throughout our day. Do you tense up when you hear your phone ping with a new email? Do you feel a surge of irritation when someone disagrees with you? Do you find yourself reaching for a snack when you are feeling stressed? These reactions might seem small, but they add up. They shape our days, our relationships, our lives. And the more aware we become of them, the more power we have to change them. Once we are aware of our reactions, the next step is to practice pausing. This doesn't mean suppressing our emotions or pretending everything is fine when it is not. It simply means creating a moment of stillness where we act. One way to do this is through breath. And you notice yourself about to react, take a deep breath. Feel the air filling your lungs. Then slowly release it. This simple act can create that crucial space between stimulus and response. Another powerful tool is to ask yourself a question. When you feel that urge to react, ask yourself, is this how I want to respond? Is this aligned with who I want to be? These questions can stop us in our tracks and give us the opportunity to choose a different path. Now, I want to be clear about something. This is not about becoming passive or letting people walk all over you. Sometimes, a strong response is exactly what's needed. But even then, would not you rather that response come from a place of conscious choice rather than automatic reaction? Let me share a personal story with you. Years ago, I was giving a lecture at a university. In the middle of my talk, a young man stood up and began loudly disagreeing with what I was saying. Now, my first instinct was to argue back, to defend my position. I could feel the words rising in my throat. But in that moment, I remembered to pause. I took a breath. And in that pause, I realized something. This young man wasn't really attacking me. He was passionate about the topic, and he was expressing that passion in the only way he knew how. Instead of arguing, I invited him to come up to the stage and share his perspective. What followed was one of the most enlightening discussions I have ever had. By not reacting, by choosing to respond with curiosity instead of defensiveness, I turned what could have been a confrontation into a valuable learning experience for everyone in that auditorium. That's the power of not reacting. It opens up possibilities that we can't even imagine when we are caught up in our automatic responses. Now, I can see some of you nodding. You are with me so far, but you might be wondering, how do I start practicing this in my daily life? Well, my friends, I'm going to give you a challenge. For the next week, I want you to pick one area of your life where you tend to react automatically. Maybe it's with your spouse or your kids or your coworkers. Maybe it's when you were driving or when you were scrolling through social media. Whatever area you choose, I want you to commit to practicing the pause. When you feel that familiar urge to react, stop, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this how I want to respond? And then choose your response consciously. It won't be easy at first. You might forget sometimes. You might find yourself reacting before you remember to pause. That's okay. This is a practice, and like any practice, it takes time and patience to develop. But I promise you, if you stick with it, you will start to see changes. You will find yourself feeling calmer, more in control. You will start to see opportunities where before you only saw problems. You will begin to shape your life intentionally, rather than just reacting to whatever comes your way. As you practice not reacting, you will start to notice that the world around you seems to change. People who used to push your buttons suddenly seem less irritating. Situations that used to stress you out become manageable. It's not that these people or situations have actually changed. It's that you've changed how you perceive and respond to them. This is what I mean when I talk about the power of not reacting. It's not just about controlling your responses, it's about transforming your entire experience of life. Now let's dig a little deeper into why not reacting is so powerful. You see, when we react automatically, we are often acting from our conditioning. We are replaying old patterns, old hurts, old fears. We are not responding to the present moment, but to our interpretation of it based on our past experiences. For example, let's say your partner forgets your anniversary. If you react automatically, you might lash out in anger or withdraw in hurt. But are you really reacting to your partner forgetting your anniversary, or are you reacting to all the times in your life when you felt forgotten or unimportant? When we create that pause, when we choose not to react immediately, we give ourselves the chance to see the situation more clearly. We can ask ourselves, what's really happening here? What's the most constructive way to handle this? This doesn't mean we ignore our emotions. Our feelings are important messengers, and we need to listen to them. But there's a difference between acknowledging our emotions and being ruled by them. When we don't react, we can feel our emotions without being controlled by them. We can use them as information to guide our conscious response, rather than letting them dictate our actions. Another powerful aspect of not reacting is that it allows us to tap into our innate wisdom. You see, each of us has a deep well of insight and understanding within us, but when we are constantly reacting, when we are caught up in the drama of our automatic responses, we can't access that wisdom. It's like trying to see your reflection in a lake that's constantly being disturbed by ripples. But when we create that pause, when we choose not to react, it's like allowing the lake to become still. And in that stillness, we can see clearly. We can access our inner guidance. I have seen this happen countless times in my own life and in the lives of people I've worked with. When they learn to pause, to not react, they suddenly find solutions to problems that have been plaguing them for years. They have insights about their relationships that transform the way they interact with others. They discover new paths forward that they never would have seen if they'd stayed caught in their habitual reaction. Now, I want to address something that might be coming up for some of you. You might be thinking, but is not it authentic to not react? Shouldn't I express what I'm feeling in the moment? This is a great question, and it gets to the heart of what we are talking about. Being authentic doesn't mean acting on every impulse or emotion that comes up. True authenticity comes from aligning our actions with our deepest values and intentions. When we react automatically, we are often not being true to who we really are, who we want to be. We are just playing out old patterns. But when we pause, when we choose our response, we have the opportunity to act from our highest self. That's true authenticity. Let me give you an example. Let's say you value kindness and understanding. Your teenager comes home late, breaking curfew for the third time this month. If you react automatically, you might yell and punish them without hearing their side of the story. But is that really aligned with your values of kindness and understanding? If you pause, if you choose not to react, you give yourself the chance to respond in a way that's truly authentic to who you are and who you want to be. You might still enforce consequences, but you do it from a place of love and understanding rather than anger and frustration. This brings us to another powerful benefit of not reacting. It transforms our relationships. When we are constantly reacting, we create a lot of unnecessary conflict and misunderstanding. We say things we don't mean. We act in ways that push people away. We create drama where there doesn't need to be any. But when we learn to pause, to choose our responses, we open up the possibility for real connection and understanding. We create space for empathy. We give others the chance to express themselves without immediately jumping in with our own reactions. Think about the people in your life who you find easiest to talk to, the ones you trust the most. Chances are they are people who don't react strongly to everything you say. They listen, they consider, they respond thoughtfully. That's the kind of person you can become when you master the art of not reacting. Now, I want to be clear about something. Not reacting doesn't mean becoming passive or letting people walk all over you. Sometimes a strong response is exactly what's needed. But even then, would not you rather that response come from a place of conscious choice rather than automatic reaction? The power of not reacting is that it gives you options. When you are not caught up in your immediate reactions, you can see more clearly what the situation calls for. Maybe it calls for setting a firm boundary. Maybe it calls for extending compassion. Maybe it calls for walking away. When you are not reacting, you have the clarity to choose the most appropriate response. Let's talk for a moment about how this principle applies in our increasingly digital world. In this age of social media and instant communication, we are constantly bombarded with stimuli that trigger our reactions. A controversial post, a critical comment, a news headline. These can all set off a chain of reactions before we even realize what's happening. But imagine if we applied the principle of not reacting to our digital lives. Imagine if, before firing off that angry tweet or leaving that defensive comment, we paused, took a breath, asked ourselves, is this how I want to respond? Is this aligned with who I want to be? I believe that if more of us practice this, we'd see a dramatic shift in our online discourse. We'd have fewer flame wars and more productive discussions. We'd spread less misinformation and more understanding. We'd create less division and more connection. And here's something really exciting. As you practice not reacting in your personal life, you will start to see opportunities to apply this principle on a larger scale. In your community, in your workplace, even in the broader society. Imagine if our leaders practice the art of not reacting. If instead of immediately attacking those who disagree with them, they pause to listen and understand. If, instead of making snap judgments, they took the time to consider multiple perspectives. How might that change the way we approach our societal challenges? Now, I can hear some of you thinking this all sounds great, but it's easier said than done. And you are absolutely right. Not reacting when we are used to reacting is one of the hardest things we can do. It goes against our conditioning, our habits, sometimes even our instincts. It gets easier with practice. It's like building a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger you get. And the rewards are immense. The peace of mind, the improved relationships, the clearer thinking. These are just the beginning of what's possible when you master the art of not reacting. So how do we build this muscle? How do we train ourselves to pause, to choose our responses instead of reacting automatically? Well, my friends, I'm going to share with you some practical strategies that you can start implementing today. First, start with your body. Our physical state has a profound impact on our mental and emotional state. When we are tense, when our breathing is shallow, when our hearts are racing, it's much harder to pause and choose our response. So practice relaxing your body throughout the day. Take deep breaths. Release tension in your muscles. This will make it easier to pause when you need to. Second, develop a mantra or a question that you can use in challenging moments. It could be something as simple as pause or is this how I want to respond? Having this ready to go can help interrupt the automatic reaction cycle. Third, practice mindfulness. This doesn't mean you need to sit in meditation for hours, although that can certainly be helpful. It simply means bringing your attention to the present moment throughout your day. Notice your surroundings. Feel the sensation of your feet on the ground. Taste your food. The more you practice being present, the easier it becomes to pause and choose your response in challenging moments. Fourth, reflect on your reactions. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to think about how you responded to different situations. Were there times when you reacted automatically? How did that turn out? Were there times when you managed to pause and choose your response? How did that feel? This reflection will help reinforce the habit of not reacting. Fifth, practice empathy. Often, our automatic reactions come from a place of self-centeredness. We are focused on how a situation affects us, how it makes us feel. But if we can pause and consider the other person's perspective, it often changes how we want to respond. So in challenging interactions, try asking yourself, what might be going on for this person? What are they feeling or needing right now? Sixth, use visual cues. Put small reminders around your environment, at your desk, on your phone, in your car, that prompt you to pause and choose your response. It could be a word, a symbol, or an image that reminds you of the power of not reacting. 7th, practice in low-stakes situations. Don't wait for major conflicts to practice not reacting. Start with small, everyday irritations. The slow cashier, the loud neighbor, the rainy day that ruins your plans. These are perfect opportunities to practice pausing and choosing your response. Now, as you start implementing these strategies, I want you to remember something crucial. Be patient and kind with yourself. You are not going to master this overnight. There will be times when you forget to pause, when you react automatically. That's okay. It's part of the process. The key is to not react to your reactions. When you catch yourself reacting, simply notice it, take a breath, and recommit to your practice. And here's something really powerful. As you get better at not reacting, you will start to notice that you have more energy. You see, reacting takes a lot of energy. It's draining to be constantly triggered, constantly on. But when you learn to pause, when you stop giving your energy away to every stimulus that comes your way, you will find that you have more energy for the things that really matter to you. You will have more energy for your passions, for your relationships, for your personal growth. You will feel more alive, more present, more engaged with life, and is not that what we all want? Now, I want to address something that might be coming up for some of you. You might be thinking, but what about injustice? What about situations where we need to take a stand? Shouldn't we react strongly to things that are wrong? This is an excellent question, and it gets to the heart of what we are discussing. The power of not reacting doesn't mean we become passive in the face of injustice or that we don't take action when action is needed. Instead, it means we respond from a place of clarity and purpose rather than blind reaction. When we encounter injustice, our immediate reaction might be anger, outrage, or even despair. These are natural and valid emotions. But if we act solely from these emotional reactions, we might not be as effective as we could be. We might lash out in ways that alienate potential allies, or we might burn ourselves out before we can create real change. By practicing the art of not reacting, we give ourselves the opportunity to channel our emotions into constructive action. We can feel the anger or outrage, acknowledge it, and then ask ourselves, what's the most effective way to address this injustice? What actions can I take that will truly make a difference? This approach allows us to be both passionate and strategic. It enables us to sustain our efforts over the long term, which is often what's needed to create meaningful change. It helps us avoid the trap of performative outrage and instead focus on actions that have real impact. Think about the great change makers in history. People like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela. These were not people who lacked strong emotions about the injustices they faced, but they were masters at not merely react. They channeled their emotions into carefully considered, strategic actions. They responded to hatred with love, to violence with nonviolence. This wasn't weakness. It was immense strength and self-control. So when you encounter injustice, by all means, feel your emotions fully, but then create that pause. In that space, ask yourself, what response will truly serve the cause of justice? What action can I take that aligns with my highest values and has the best chance of creating positive change? This approach can be applied not just to societal injustices, but to personal situations as well. Perhaps you are dealing with a toxic work environment or a challenging family situation. The power of not reacting gives you the clarity to see your options and choose the most effective path forward. Now, let's explore another dimension of not reacting, its impact on our creative potential. When we are constantly reacting to the world around us, we are operating from our conditioned minds, our habitual patterns of thought. But true creativity requires us to step outside these patterns to see things from new perspectives. By practicing the art of not reacting, we create space for new ideas to emerge. We allow ourselves to sit with questions rather than jumping to immediate answers. We become more comfortable with uncertainty, which is the fertile ground from which innovation springs. Think about a time when you had a creative breakthrough. Chances are, it didn't come when you were stressed and reactive. It probably came in a moment of relaxation, maybe when you were doing something completely unrelated to the problem you were trying to solve. That's because when we are not reacting, when we are in a state of open awareness, we allow our subconscious minds to make new connections. This principle applies whether you are an artist, an entrepreneur, a scientist, or anyone seeking innovative solutions to problems. By cultivating the ability to not react, you are nurturing your creative potential. Let's consider how this might play out in a practical scenario. Imagine you are in a brainstorming session at work. Someone suggests an idea that you think is completely off base. Your immediate reaction might be to dismiss it or argue against it. But what if you pause instead? What if you chose not to react to your initial judgment? In that pause, you might find yourself asking, what if this idea, which seems wrong at first glance, actually has some merit? What if we combined it with another idea? What new possibilities might emerge if we explore this further? By not reacting to your initial assessment, you open up the potential for unexpected innovations. This brings us to another powerful aspect of not reacting. It enhances our ability to learn and grow. When we are quick to react, we often shut down opportunities for new understanding. We stick to what we already know, what feels comfortable and familiar. But true growth happens when we step out of our comfort zones, when we are willing to consider new ideas and perspectives. By practicing not reacting, we cultivate a mindset of curiosity and openness. We become better listeners, better learners. Think about a time when you had a disagreement with someone. If you reacted immediately, defending your position and arguing against theirs, what was the outcome? Probably not much learning or growth on either side. But what if you had paused, set aside your initial reaction, and genuinely tried to understand their perspective? You might have learned something new, even if you still ended up disagreeing. This approach can transform not just our personal interaction, but our relationship with the world at large. In an age of information overload and polarized opinions, the ability to pause, to not react immediately to every piece of information or every opposing viewpoint is more valuable than ever. It allows us to think critically, to consider multiple perspectives before forming our opinions. It helps us avoid the echo chambers that social media algorithms often create for us. By not reacting, we give ourselves the chance to seek out diverse viewpoints, to challenge our own assumptions, and to arrive at more nuanced understandings of complex issues. Now, I want to touch on something that's crucial to understand as you embark on this journey of mastering the art of not reacting. It's about the relationship between not reacting and our emotions. Some people mistakenly believe that not reacting means suppressing our emotions, pushing them down, or pretending they don't exist. Nothing could be further from the truth. Emotions are a vital part of our human experience. They provide us with important information about our inner state and our relationship to the world around us. The art of not reacting is not about not feeling our emotions. It's about not being controlled by them. It's about creating a space between the emotion and our response, a space in which we can choose how to act. In fact, practicing not reacting can actually help us develop a healthier relationship with our emotions. When we are not immediately acting on every feeling that arises, we give ourselves the chance to really experience our emotions, to sit with them, to understand them better. This can lead to greater emotional intelligence. We become better at recognizing our emotions as they arise, understanding what triggers them, and managing them effectively. We learn to see our emotions not as dictators that must be obeyed, but as advisors offering input that we can choose to act on or not. For instance, let's say you feel a surge of anger when a coworker takes credit for your idea in a meeting. If you react immediately, you might say something you will regret, damaging your professional relationships. But if you practice not reacting, you can acknowledge the anger, feel it fully, but then choose how to respond. You might decide to address the issue privately with your coworker later, or you might realize that it's not worth confronting and choose to let it go. Or you might see it as a sign that you need to be more assertive in presenting your ideas in the future. The point is, by not reacting, you give yourself options. You are no longer at the mercy of your immediate emotional responses. This brings us to another important point, the role of self-awareness in mastering the art of not reacting. To create that crucial pause between stimulus and response, we need to be aware of our triggers, our habitual reactions, our emotional patterns. This is where practices like mindfulness and self-reflection become invaluable. By regularly checking in with ourselves, by paying attention to our thoughts and feelings without judgment, we develop the self-awareness necessary to catch ourselves before we react. It's like developing an internal observer, a part of ourselves that can step back and watch our reactions as they unfold. With practice, this observer can intervene, creating that vital pause that allows us to choose our response. I want to touch on something profound. As you master this art, as you create more space between stimulus and response in your life, you may find yourself asking deeper questions about who you really are. When we are constantly reacting, we often identify strongly with our reactions. We think our anger is us, our fear is us, our judgments are us. But as we learn to create space, as we learn to observe our reactions without immediately acting on them, we start to realize that we are not our reactions. We are the awareness behind the reactions. This realization can be truly liberating. It frees us from the tyranny of our conditioned responses. It opens up the possibility of choosing who we want to be in each moment, rather than being driven by our habits and conditioning. And this is the ultimate power of not reacting. It's not just about improving our relationships or being more effective in our actions, although these are certainly valuable benefits. At its core, the power of not reacting is about reclaiming our freedom to choose who we are and how we show up in the world. As we practice this art, we may find that we are no longer as easily swayed by external circumstances. We develop an inner stability, a sense of peace that is not dependent on everything going our way. We become less reactive and more responsive, less driven by our fears and more guided by our values and intentions. This doesn't mean life becomes perfect or that challenges disappear, but it does mean that we develop the capacity to meet life's ups and downs with greater equanimity. We become, like that vast guy I mentioned at the beginning, able to hold all of life's experiences without being fundamentally disturbed by them. As we cultivate this inner stability, this ability to respond rather than react, we often find that the world around us seems to change. Difficult people become easier to deal with. Challenging situations become opportunities for growth. The constant drama that once characterized our lives starts to fade away. It's not that the world has actually changed. It's that our way of relating to it has transformed. By mastering the art of not reacting, we change the only thing we truly have control over, ourselves. And in doing so, we change our entire experience of life. So, my friends, as we come to the close of our time together, I want to leave you with a challenge. For the next week, commit to practicing the art of not reacting. Choose one area of your life where you tend to be reactive and make a conscious effort to create that pause between stimulus and response. It might be in your interactions with a specific person or in a particular type of situation. Whatever you choose, bring your full awareness to it. Notice when you feel the urge to react. Create that pause, take a breath, and then choose your response consciously. It won't be easy. You will probably forget sometimes. You will have moments when you react before you remember to pause. That's okay. This is a practice, and like any practice, it takes time and patience to develop. But I promise you, if you stick with it, you will start to see changes. You will find yourself feeling calmer, more in control. You will start to see opportunities where before you only saw problems. You will begin to shape your life intentionally, rather than just reacting to whatever comes your way. And as you do this, remember that you are not alone. Millions of people around the world are on this journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Every time you choose to pause, to not react, you are contributing to a shift in consciousness that has the potential to transform not just your life, but the world around you. So take that breath, create that pause. Choose your response, and watch as your life transforms one moment at a time. Thank you for your attention, my friends. May you find peace, joy, and freedom in the power of not reacting.